we'll find the flag right behind us and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So with the flag stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You know, if you're wondering why we're having this here, it was all about attendance and making sure we had plenty of room, which it appears we do. So, anything to add to the agenda?
I don't know.
Anyone else? I do. If not, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as shown.
I move to approve the agenda.
Luke?
Second.
Second by Bill. Other discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. I have not heard from Katie. I didn't check my phone recently. I believe she'll be here, but we'll just wait and see. Scheduled presenters. This is our annual truth and taxation presentation, which Mr. Sampson has prepared for us, and will be on your screen.
Yes, I won't take all the credit for this, because Josh did a lot of the credit too, and he'll be presenting the annual truth and taxation meeting tonight. And so let me get this dialed up and we will start.
Normally I can see that screen pretty well with my glasses. I don't have my glasses tonight, so
You want to come
I'm reading
closer?
off my sheet, so age is a wonderful thing. So the truth taxation meeting is just our opportunity to kind of go through where our current budget is, kind of compare that to prior year, where that was at, since a lot of the funds that come from the district are levy based. And then I'll get the second half of the presentation is about kind of where the taxes are kind of divvied out or spent and where they come in from. So the baseline of the presentation was kind of set together through the SSC, or Southeast Service Club I belong to, and then it's our information that's kind of plugged into here. Although it's kind of a short report, it's a lot of information that's fed into it. 66 pages of our budget that goes into that, a year's worth of revenue and expenditures, and all the information that goes into the actual expenditures, and then a lot of the work for the levy, which you'll see not in this, but in the 39 pages of the actual levy document itself. All the things that kind of funnel into it. And for us, a lot of that is debt service and bond, voter approved items that show up. So this is kind of the culmination of all those things into what kind of forms our budget and where the money goes. So the first kind of two slides are really preliminary. The next one, if we get, maybe the next one, yeah. Just kind of get into the nuts and bolts a little bit. The first page that we start out with is the overview of the 2022-2023 revenues. And what we do here, we kind of line up what the prior year actual was. So now I've been through the audit. These are actually the numbers that were finalized through our audit. All funds combined, about $26.6 million. There's a little bit of offset in there that we have to recognize, as we received a large fund, about $8 million or so, in the building construction, as we approved the sale of the bonds for the CTE and HVAC improvements. I received those funds. The expenditures won't show until the next fiscal year. So you'll see a corresponding bump in the expenditures for the budget when we look at the expenditures for the 2020 through 2023. So what we do here is we show the actual amounts of revenue for each fund for 21-22, and then compare it against the budget for 2022-2023, and give you kind of a percent change. What you would see here is while we did have some funding increase from the state of Minnesota on the formula, the state of Minnesota's formula is based on ADM, so we have fewer students, we get a little less revenue is part of that, but also why you don't see a full 2% increase in revenue is we had a little bit more federal funding from COVID dollars last year, so those won't show into the general fund for the 2022-23 budget. So it's a slight increase in the overall budget for the general fund, but what we would probably look at, if all things remain consistent, we'd at least see a 2% increase because of the state funding formula. We don't see that because of some lower enrollment. Food service, we had a large help again from federal programs in fiscal '22. So the actual dollars there, you see 1.2+ million in food service. That's because they offered fully paid lunch and breakfast, milk. So a lot more federal funds received last year. Not going to be as much coming in 22, 23. So that's why you see the decrease in the food service funding for fiscal '23. Community Ed is the next fund, and that would encompass not only Cannon Kids, but any community education programming. We had some funding dollars again from federal funds that allowed us to do some things with preschool and early childhood that would be field trips for Cannon Kids, field trips. Those funds would be as available to us for fiscal '23, so that you see the decrease in the budget there. In revenue, we have to make sure we adjust our programming to that, but that's the negative decrease in the community ed for fiscal '23. The actual dollars in building construction at $8 million, that's usually a fund that we don't have on the books because we don't always have bond projects going on. But we do, then that fund is used, it's Fund 6. And we received all the revenue in fiscal '22 and will pay the majority of the expense in fiscal '23 as the project will start its construction this summer. So you see a large decrease in revenue from fiscal '22 to '23, and that's because those dollars were received in '22, not '23. You'll see the corresponding increase in expenditure when we get to the expenditures. Debt service is Fund 7, and that is really set up to pay the debt, more or less you could say the mortgage payment. When we go up for a bond, it's a 20-year bond. Those payments are set. All the information gets sent by Ehlers, our financing company, to the counties. So they get onto the levy and make sure those things are verified and correct. Part of the reason for the decrease, one is we did have some debt service payment on that new bond last year, so we did receive some funds, but not all of it. But debt service is set to collect at 105%. The counties assume that there'll be some sort of delinquent funding collections for taxes, so they set the levy at 105%. We will build up a debt excess when that happens. The county lowers our levy and gives that money back to the taxpayers, or more or less doesn't raise the taxes as much as really what it amounts to. But we had some of that debt excess, so it helped reduce some of that debt burden. And that's what the decrease is in there. We don't have less obligations, we just have build up some excess debt service money. When we receive those debt service funds, they're earmarked only for debt service, so when we build an excess there, we can't transfer those funds to a general fund or a community ed or food service. So those funds are the taxpayers' dollars, they go back to the taxpayers. Trust agency is the last fund, and that's Fund 9, generally scholarships. We also have in there, because that's an account that we can roll over, we have now set up, you've seen in the gyms and at the football field, we've got advertising on those scoreboards. We have, essentially it's a scoreboard account, or for activities, athletics, those sorts of things. It's set to pay for the scoreboard initially, but as we get rolling and we still collect those revenues from advertising, they'll be able to be used towards other projects. So we keep that in trust and agency and can roll that and build it each year. So that's kind of overview of revenues, of how the actuals went for last year versus where we budgeted for in this coming year. This budget was built in May and approved by the board, actually in June. No, it'd be May. Built and approved in May. When we do the revision, which will probably be the February board meeting, roughly, there could be lots of changes. One would be inflationary. Things are costing a lot more, and depending on how cool it gets this winter, fuel and utilities could be an issue for us, as well as just fuel for the bus garage and just overall cost of other things. So this was our best kind of estimate of where things would be in May. There'll be some changes that we'll show when we do in February. Just where they fall, once we start digging into the budget, we'll kind of know a better idea there. Can you go to the next slide? This just kind of graphically shows kind of where the revenues come from for our district. And the largest chunk, the largest section there, 75%, is state aid. And again, that's based on EDM and the funding formula and how the state does their fraud predictive formula. Local sources, when it says local sources, that really is what we talk about today, the truth in taxation portion. The majority of local source dollars are your tax revenue from the county. Majority is Goodhue County. We have a small portion in Dakota County. So about 22% roughly, based on this last budget, comes from the local taxpayers. So when you approve a bond or you approve a referendum and it hits our local taxes, those are the dollars that are going back to our district. And then the smaller portion there is federal aid, at just under 3%. Federal aid, it's not quite, because we've been in it the last 2 years, we think of this, CARES dollars, COVID dollars for federal. But we've got title grants, Title I, Title II, and as well as anything free and reduced in our food service program, we consider federal aid. So those are the dollars that would be rolled into that federal aid category. Go to the next one. I'm going to do an overview of expenditures, and this is set up the same as the revenue summary, so I'll just kind of go through that briefly, but you'll see the actual dollars, and again, those are the audited dollars of what we spent in each of the funds. Slight decrease in general fund budget, and the reason that it slightly decrease is when we have those COVID dollars, so we have to do some of the right sizing. We're not going to have some of those projects. We don't have as many federal dollars in 23. But also, we have more and more, I guess, more projects in 22 than we'll have in 23 based on federal dollars. So those aren't in this federal or the fiscal 23 budget. So just a slight decrease. It's not a lot when you look at the big picture. At almost nearly $14 million, but it is a slight decrease for fiscal 23. Food service will be a significant decrease in the expenditures because we did some things last year with federal dollars that we were able to do to help improve the flow of the food service lines in the elementary. Like cut down the wall, put in some more height serving areas so the kids go through and get food a little better. Generally speaking, because we don't run food service to make a profit, most years we're looking at the end of it of doing a transfer from general fund to food service. Last year we were able to do a transfer from food service to general fund. And when that transfer, we're looking at allocating expenditures such as fuel and utilities back to food service, or maybe some custodial costs that happens in the food service area that we don't cover in a general year, but we're able to do because we had some federal dollars, so we're able to help offset that a little bit. But there will be a decrease in fiscal 23 in those expenditures. Likewise in community ed, that's more of right sizing. We don't have the availability to offer the free field trips that we had, so those won't be on the table, but the expense gets taken out, so you'll see a reduction in community ed. Building construction, this is the one we talked about, the big offset. There were some expenses in last year because we had design and progress building on some projects. We had some setup for the CCC building roof. So there were some expenses in that building project in 22, but the bulk of that expense is going to happen in 23 once we hit the spring here. So there's a large change, and that number looks alarming, but that's because we received the revenue in 22, but we're doing the expense in 23. And then trust and agency, again, the real kind of increase, I suppose, in the revenue there is part of the expense for scholarships are going to be paid, some of them are going to be paid directly from the donor to the recipient. So it's not going to go through the school, so we won't have that much revenue coming in, as much revenue coming in as in the past. So we'll be writing those checks. That means there's not as much expense going out in that scholarship fund. But what we see is we've got the revenue for the scoreboard, so we'll be doing some funding and paying for things within activities for that. So it generally it hits around that $100,000, $90,000 to $100,000 mark. So that's what it's budgeted for in 23. So that's just kind of the base overview of expenditures and revenues. And the next one, I think we have the graphically of kind of where, I guess this was a little bit more complicated. So it's not a graph, but it's got numbers, and that can maybe help give you a visual of it as well. But when we talk about expenses for, I do have a graph on the next one. So if you want to see the numbers or if you want to see the picture, I can go through either one, whichever works better for you.
Well, if they're both the same, we'll go into the picture.
Yeah, pictures are good. So when you talk about expense and where the majority of our dollars are spent and go, you're generally looking at the big blue for salaries and wages and the large red for employee benefits. So that's just the salary, wages, and benefits for employees of the district. The other part to note about that, so that roughly is about 68% of what we do at expenditures. The other portion that's really kind of important to recognize too, because we do purchase services there. That's the green dollar, the green side. That's the next biggest one, purchase services. That's where we contract through teachers on call, substitute teaching. So a lot of the expenses in the purchase services. So while the blue and the red give you a picture of all the on staff in our district, Our GCD employees that we paid back to GCD is in the green section. Our TOC, substitute teachers, those would be in the green section. So really a big number. It's probably more like 75% of what we do is based on payroll for people in the district. Then you see the purple square, supplies and materials. Doesn't probably translate to you as much. That's 4 in the 500 series for me in my office, general supplies and equipment. Capital expenditures at 500 is the smaller. So really the total budget you're looking at supplies, materials, and capital expenditures in the normal general fund, it's about 8.7% of what we do for expenditures, which lends to a difficult part of conversation when it comes to try to make budget changes in expenditures, because you can try to cut supplies and materials as much as we can to get down to bare, but really the largest part of what we do is employees, and that's kind of just the reality of it. Next portion, I start to talk into the levy now. So what it's kind of important to recognize, this is the 2022 payable 2023 levy. We'll get to use those dollars in fiscal 24. So the tech levy is in this now. While it was approved last year when we did the bond for that, we don't get the funds to spend until fiscal 24. So 2023, 2024 is when we get to spend the dollars for the tech. Next one is just going to say how will your taxes be spent and what kind of funding will it go to. So you're looking at about 54% of the tax dollars will go into general fund. These things are made for your basic instructional programmings, things that aren't necessarily provided by the general funding from the state, provides for operating capital expenses, building, land lease, all safety costs, things that are kind of the general operation of the district. A small portion, and it's small because it's just the relativity of the number. The budget of community ed is about $700,000, so of a $7 million levy, it's a small portion of what they'll receive in there, apart from levy, but that's for community education programs. And then the next biggest number is the debt service, and that's for payment on principal and interest of our bonds that we have outstanding. So basically those three funds are the beneficiary of the tax funding and the levy. Next page this will be kind of the page that is the summary of what the board will later approve for the levy certification resolution. And what this will show is our comparison of the current levy that we're asking to approve tonight versus what was actual last year. So general fund is an increase of 10.8%. Within those numbers are the increase in the tech levy, as well as the increase in the HVAC CTE project. Those are the big items that make up the difference in the general fund revenue. Now you say that we went out for a $400,000 tech levy, which we did, and why did that increase $400,000? Which it doesn't do that because, again, we're based on ADMs and pupil units, so there's some mixing back and forth there. If you have fewer students, that revenues decrease, but then we get the increase of the tech levy inside of that general fund area. So it's not the full $400,000. I mean, it is the full $400,000, but there are other reductions elsewhere in the levy process that reduce that number. Community services, just a slight increase. Again, in relative terms of our total levy, it's a smaller amount. Debt service, for the proposed, there'll be a slight increase, and again, since we have a debt service reduction, things will equalize out again, and you receive the 105%. So you'll kind of see that debt service waver a little bit back and forth as it goes. While we have a large increase because we've got the tech levy and the CTE to pay off on, there's some excess that's reducing that number to only a $59,000 increase, about 3.1% increase in the debt service. Overall, the total levy is increasing 7%. That's going to be the number if people are to ask for one. 7% increase in the total levy. The last page, this is kind of what will end up into the language you'll see later in the resolution portion for the levy, but this is, and this will be read off at that point. But when we certify or when we send the levy off at the initial levy in September, we send it at the maximum, and that's so that there can be some movement back and forth as either numbers change based on voting referendums or student counts and those sort of things. It allows flexibility as the counties and the state work together to figure out where it all lands. When we get to December, we have to certify a number. So rather than be able to have a resolution based on certifying the max, we're now certifying an actual number. So these numbers will be read off when we get to that resolution portion. The maintenance or the general fund will be 2.448 million, community ed 143,000, the debt service 1.963 million, for a total proposed school levy of $4,555,071.52. And that's what we'll end up certifying tonight, that portion of the meeting. It's a lot of information. It's, like I said, it's really a whole lot more that gets fallen into this. It's really a brief kind of summary, but if there are any questions, I can certainly do my best to answer what you'd have.
Josh, during the year, how many people ask for budget information, constituency?
Not a lot. Small handful.
When,
More queries, I guess, from internal here than outside.
people who are interested and they make some budget accusations about how money is spent. It's always interesting to see when they have the opportunity to come in and watch this and be transparent as we are obligated to do. So
It's exciting information.
you know, it's always good for us to see it, and it's part of our obligation as a board and as our liaisons to the community.
Yeah, and I think, as we go through the process, both budgeting and certifying levy and putting all these pieces together, this is definitely not something you can do overnight. It's a long process to get to it, and there's just hundreds of checks and balances along the way to get to this point. So it's been thoroughly reviewed by admin, district, community, having a chance to get through here. You can speak at the ballot box, and so there's a lot of information that goes into this portion. So it's pretty solid, and I think pretty typical of our sort of it would be conservative or it's a very good representation of what we have for revenues and budgets without trying to be conservative, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, between what you've just shown us here and the fact that a lot of people don't know about the different areas that money gets distributed to,
Yeah.
trust and agency for one, I would guess not a lot of people are aware of that. And with Mr. Sampson continuing on budget discussions and having that, it just adds to the transparency that
Yeah, there are large topics. There's a lot of information that goes into it. A lot of it is complicated and complex. It's kind of hard to make it fun and exciting for someone to get. So that's part of the reason I suppose you don't get a lot of questions on it. But we try to do our best to be very honest and upfront and transparent with the things that we do, and I think this shows that.
Any questions for Josh?
Josh, just coming out of COVID where we won't have some of that funding, is there an area where you see concern of?
Well, so we tried, for the most part, you're looking at, the concern is always going to be if you have staffing, because COVID dollars really are one-time expenses for us, or one-time dollars for us. So there'll be some need to do some right-sizing. We have a few staff that were funded out of COVID dollars that, in order for our general fund budget to support that, they're not going to be supported through those means. So that may be a little bit of a challenge. But we tried as much as we can to offset costs that are either one-time or just strictly COVID related.
Thank you.
This total proposed school tax levy, this number, how different are we than what we asked the people for?
In terms, so the total increase would be, I'm trying to figure out, you're asking about the questions for the ballot?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The same.
Okay.
The dollars are in there. The reason why it fluctuates, like I said, it's a $238,000 increase in general fund.
Mm-hmm.
Why it doesn't show 400 is because there's a lot of numbers that feed into that 2.448 million of the general fund dollars. So we have the full amount of the $400,000 tech levy is in there. The full amount to cover and debt service, the payment for the HVAC and CT is in there. But other areas are decreased because it's based on ADMs or pupil units. So we'll receive less funding because we have fewer students, but the dollars that we ask the public for are 100% there. Yep. Yep.
Anyone else? If not, we're moving on. Jeff, you anything?
Nope.
Okay. Student school board rep. Nathan, you're on.
So, we had 2 snow days in a row last week. I think some students definitely enjoyed that. It's quite, it was quite inconvenient because we have a break coming up already, so we didn't get to use those snow days later on, which is what I would have preferred. And there's dicey weather coming later this week too, so. But the band concert is tonight. It's happening in 35 minutes actually. And then the choir concert was last Monday. Those were their Christmas concerts. And then today we dressed up in pajamas. I'm still wearing my pajamas. And then we're doing red versus green tomorrow, competition. And then Wednesday we do our classic ugly sweater day. And then Thursday is whiteout. So we'll even see if we have school that day, but if we don't, I think we'll still have students wear their whiteout and go out in the snow and wear their whiteouts. So that will be fun. The giving tree, we set that up after school today. We'll actually wheel out the tree from the band concert tonight, so that'll be all ready. So you just donate gently used clothing items, and they'll go to DAV Minnesota. MHS had the food drive last week in the elementary school. We did lots of collecting today, gathering and counting all the items, and we got over 1,000 pounds of food, which is really awesome. So that will all go to the local food shelf. And then the student council is selling candy canes this week. It's called Candy Cane Grams. So you can buy a candy cane for $1, and then hopefully on Thursday we'll have the moose handed out secretly. It'll be like a kind of a secret thing. If not, then we'll probably just hand those out once break is over. And then Humanities finished their 40-hour projects last week, so they're presenting those this week in class, and I think some of them are already out there in the showcase if you want to take a peek. Some of them are very interesting and cool, and they worked really hard on them, so that was really interesting.
Good. You always say that's all I have, that's plenty. You're always busy at school.
Always busy at school.
Yeah. Any questions for Nathan? Board committee reports. I'll start. I went to GCED, and we focused on the evaluation that we're to do on an annual basis, and the discussion was who should be doing the eval. Should it be the superintendents who probably have more contact, or should it be the board reps? And so the final conversation was each individual school should be, the board rep and the superintendent should be in discussion about what they want to project as their evaluation. And we didn't do a lot on there because 3 of the 6 board members will be finished in December. So they'll have to reappoint, I guess, if you will, those board members. So that's about all we had. Eval was the main topic, and we did go over the budget at GCED, which looks much improved. So that's what I have. Other committee reports?
I attended the staff development cabinet meeting on December 12th, and they were giving updates on everything going on with going through the last batch of new science standards, checking in with new teachers. They have a food drive that was going well. Preparing for the vertical alignment process during their after-school staff development meetings. They were happy to hear that the staff development budget had been approved at the last board meeting. KSABO is half done with their peer reviews. And then they did some planning for staff development, and the dollars available for workshops. They have January 3rd workshop day. February 21st will be ELL strategies, mental health. March 13th, MCA training and vertical alignment. And then set up some other after-school dates. And they'll be writing their agendas for staff development days in January and February. And then the next quarterly meeting is February 13th. Those are my detailed notes.
Yeah, you do well.
I did attend the WeChat
Oh, yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
And they basically, at that meeting, we just did an audit presentation. And there were no findings of anything, with their audit presentation. So they had, I think it was Smith and Schaefer, I believe. Yeah, was their presentation guy, and so we listened to that, and then we didn't have much else in that meeting, other than just updates on the fact that a lot of things that they have ordered in the past 6 months still haven't come in. So they're still having issues with getting the supplies that they ordered a long time ago. So like monitors and different technology pieces that people are still waiting for, some of them that they ordered maybe back in April. So, but otherwise, all of their construction projects are wrapping up, and he's starting on preparing for next school year already. So.
Also, the Ed Foundation, they met, they didn't have their full board meeting, but they met to plan for the auction and go through all the list of donors and started to contact people for donations for the auction next year. And then Community Ed will have a meeting this Wednesday.
Bill, you had finance?
I attended the finance committee meeting. A lot of it was around the bids on the construction project. That came in very nicely, probably under budget, which was very helpful. Kind of looking at putting that together, and it ties in with facilities, which you're on. But, we spoke a little bit about the truth in taxation. There's some questions around some of the COVID dollars, how those work. I think Bobby mentioned earlier about, Josh did, about positions that are in place, using those, and you kind of have to look at that. So I think that was a question that was raised to me after the meeting on where we're at, and now we'll look at that. So could be.
There are sometimes over the last couple of years, we don't have any reports for committee, so we're busy. That's good. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, moving down to administrative board reports. Jen, anything here for us?
Nothing beyond the report. We're dressing up at the elementary, trying to kick off into winter break after 2 snow days, so it's a pretty lively place. So nothing beyond what's on the report, though.
Middle school, high school, Jen?
Just one other addition to what I've got there. Amanda Thompson was nominated by Jeff and I as a STEM Forward Educator of the Year, and she got 2nd place in that process. So she will be recognized beginning of February at a ceremony in Rochester for that. So congratulations to her. We did have a curriculum and tech meeting tonight after school, so there will be a proposal for some curriculum changes to high school health and phy-ed coming in January. And we had a nice report from Stacy on tech and the impact of, Jeff, what is it exactly that new statute called? It's the student data privacy?
Student data privacy.
Yeah,
is a good way to put it.
And the impact that that's had on what we do in both the middle school, high school, and elementary school. So.
Yep.
Questions for either principal? Reed, what's new?
I'll just highlight what I shared in that report, as there's a lot of recognition here. Congratulations to our AAA winners. Those are senior awards, high school league. That goes to Tegan Stricker and Cannon Quaid. That's 3.0 GPA or higher and out for an athletic and fine art activity. So congratulations to them. That did get posted to social media today as well. And congratulations to our junior awards. Those are the Excel winners. Those are Excellence in Community Education and Leadership. That is Randy Hansen and Calvin Singlewald. Again, active in activities, leaders in the school, and a strong commitment to community service. Staff recognition, Melissa Huseth from the State Volleyball Championship took down 2 Coach of the Year awards, AA Coach of the Year from the Volleyball Coaches Association, and then another person shared with me that she was a Region Coach of the Year winner out of 33 states and honored last Friday down in Omaha. So congratulations to her. Well deserved as well. Community Ed Flyer, that actually went live today with the snow days we had. A few hiccups there, but that is printed and ready for disbursement. Got launched onto Infinite Campus as well today. Brendan mentioned we have our second advisory council meeting on Wednesday. And lastly, want to thank Judy Conway. She filled in as our long-term sub while Afton was out, and she has stayed on a few more hours, which will terminate tomorrow as her last day of helping with student activity. And then lastly, want to thank Afton Otto for all she has done for our office to keep us afloat and running as she has decided to stay home with those twin babies. So we will definitely miss her, but happy for her and her family.
Thank you. Anything for you? Head of Operations and Maintenance, you saw Dave's post. Stressful time of year for, I think, building managers, building people, isn't it? So you can take a look and read that as your schedule permits. Soup report.
Just want to give a quick construction update. We talked about the bids, I believe, at the last meeting, that they came in under budget right now, which is good. Obviously, we have to get through the project first before we can actually say that they're under budget, because things pop up sometimes. We met with Carl Sanderson today as an admin team and looked at the big picture of the logistics of how the construction project will roll out versus our summer programming this year, and we got a few kinks worked out there. If you remember, we have an insurance project going on at the elementary this summer as well, where both skylights over both academic areas of the elementary will be replaced next summer, or this coming summer, I should say. That'll take roughly 6 weeks, but we're counting on it to probably take longer because that's the way things seem to be going this year. So the elementary will, in a sense, be shut down most, if not all, of the summer. And between the excavation outside from the construction project and the interior skylight replacements, we need to move Cannon Kids out of that building. And preliminarily, we're looking at the CCC at this point as a summer Cannon Kids option. And then we will be having all of our summer school programming coming out of the high school here as well. But more details will be coming out about that as that continues to be developed. So,
Question for Jim? Okay. Just a quick note from the maintenance report was that the CCC roof is 95% complete. It might even be farther along than that, huh?
hopefully.
You gave me that look.
That's all I'm going to say.
All right. All right. So, public comment. I'm not going to read this. It'll take a little while to read something like this. Does anyone wish to speak to the board? Done. Moving on. Consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted under one motion. In the event a board member wants to speak about any one item, it can be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Everyone have a chance to look and review. When you're ready, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as shown.
say, not that I wanna talk anymore, but I think the bottom of the page I cut off, and you get finance report and stuff, I'm happy to skip it if you like.
Yeah, I wondered what it
You
was,
can go
and
back
I thought
after.
the next
You
page,
can go back after consent if you want.
did we all get cut off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
okay.
so is that supposed to be?
It's down here.
Okay, anyone like to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Bill on the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Katie. Other discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Finance report.
All right. This one's a bit shorter and sweet as we got kind of into normalcy a little bit, but we look at the top is your cash balances at the banks currently. Again, what we look at here, we start talking funds, and you saw in the truth in taxation, this would be a commingle of all the funds that we have on hand. So this is not just general, not just community ed dollars are being spent here, it's all our dollars. And it is cash, not fund balance based. A couple of things to kind of note in cash flow. Most of the expenses you see going through down the lines are the payroll liabilities on the 15th and 30th of the month. But some things to note, bus purchase and van purchases. We've had a little bit of difficulty. The bus originally would have been here before the school year started. It keeps getting pushed back. We were told at one time December 15th, and now it's still not quite here yet. But we've been told it's in the works, and we'll get it hopefully soon. I guess that's the closest one I can give you. We had 2 vans ordered, and the vendor that we had was cut off by Ford. They had to stop production on them, so we were one of the unfortunate ones that got cut off as well. So we're in the process now of trying to locate 2 other vans and see what our options are going to be. The waiver is no longer an option. That's not offered through Minnesota Department of Transportation. So we're looking at other avenues, places to give the vans. The other part of that is that, and we've got a kind of plan in place, but the cost of the vans are more than what we had budgeted for originally. The cost of vehicles in general is a lot more right now. Even used is kind of insane. Right in the middle, you'll see just kind of the final cleanup of taxes. There's just a final rollover cleanup at the end of January, small amount from Dakota County and Goodhue County. But the big thing in this document is the start of February is when our debt service payments are made. So it'd be, we don't pay our mortgage monthly, it's one time a year. It's the debt service point at that time. So those bonds that will come due, 2017 A and B, those are the refunded fieldhouse and auditorium bonds. And 16 and 22, 16 would be the first HVAC project, and then the 22 is the new HVAC and CTE project. And one of those deals were constructed so that our debt service is essentially leveled off or equalized, so it's a lower payment on this new bond until we get the other ones paid off, but essentially with about $1.8 million in total debt service payments will be paid at the end of January, beginning of February. Even with that, we stay positive for cash flow balance and aren't doing any borrowing, so it's a good sign. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Questions for Josh? There have been times in our past history when we have had to borrow, so it's always good to share. If no one has any questions, I would look for a motion to approve the finance report as told.
I'll move to approve.
Bill on the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Lou. Other discussion? All in favor of the approval of the finance report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Old business, we have none. New biz, consideration to approve the second reading of the amended bylaws of the Cannon Falls Ed Foundation.
Yep, this is obviously the second reading of this document, and I guess I haven't received any questions from any of you since the last meeting, so unless something has come up recently, I would recommend approval of bylaws. As shown.
Yeah, the red line is here too, and I would make a motion to approve the second reading of the amended bylaws.
Motion by Brenda,
I'll second.
Second by Jolynn. Other discussion? All in favor of the approval of the second reading of the amended bylaws for the Ed Foundation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consideration to approve an extended medical leave from January 1 to May 19.
Yes, this will be for Ariana Larson, be a continuation of her leave, and I recommend approval.
Motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Luke on the motion,
I'll second.
Katie on the second. Other discussion? All in favor of this medical leave extension, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Consideration to approve the 23-24 school calendar.
Yes, normally we bring 2 calendars for the next 2 years, but I've received some feedback from community members and staff members alike that are in favor of the starting early piece. And so I would like us to approve next year's calendar because we can't start early because of the construction project. Again, so we have to start at a normal time. But there are some avenues for us to pursue to start early each year because of the amount of construction projects that we have or could have going on in the district. There is a statute that gives us possibilities for that. And so what I'd like to do is ask the board not only to approve this calendar, but also allow me to do some surveying of community and staff members to see if they would like to start early every year. Pine Island is one example of a community that does that. They start 1 week early. Some communities start 2 weeks early. So, something to consider.
What were some of the comments that people made that they did like it? Why? Like why? What was the rationale?
A lot of it was revolved around sports, and plus the end of the summer, kids were kind of done with summer and they wanted to get back to school.
Okay.
Around that time.
How will you survey the public?
It would be a Google form survey that we would email out to our parents. It'd be more for the parents, I should
Okay.
say, not the public.
Yep.
Yep. So,
Yeah, I think it's imperative that we do a survey of some kind, just to get a overall picture of what people think.
Are you gonna survey staff as well then?
Yep. Yeah, we'll survey staff and then community and then bring those results for you guys to look at, and then that'll give us some direction to see where we wanna go for the 24, 25 and subsequent calendars.
I think that should definitely address any time constraints that we ran into this time because of
Yes.
vacation, that sort of thing, because that was some of the commentary that we got, because it was short notice.
Yeah, if we can get the survey out relatively soon and then get feedback and bring it back here, we should at least have well over a year in advance notice for subsequent calendars.
Look for a motion to approve the 23-24 school calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Katie on the motion,
I'll second.
second by Jolynn. Other discussion? All in favor of the 23-24 school calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consideration to approve the fiscal year 23 final levy certification.
This is exactly what it says it is, and this is from the previous presentation by Josh, and remember that any motions need to approve a specific number, not just a max levy.
Okay, look for a motion to approve the fiscal year final levy certification.
I'll make a motion to
I'll
approve.
second.
Katie on the motion, Brenda on the second. Other discussion?
To approve that amount, can you see that?
Oh, to approve
It's a
the
resolution.
$4,555,071.52.
And Brenda would second that.
So that's-
Brenda,
You
you seconded
second
that?
the
Motion.
amount?
Yeah, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to get through the discussion. Yeah, we're good. Any other discussion? Clerk?
Whereas pursuant to Minnesota statutes, the School Board of Cannon Falls School District, Cannon Falls, Minnesota is authorized to make the following proposed tax levies for general purposes. Maintenance General Fund, $2,448,156.93, includes the referendum. Community Service, $143,457.16. Debt Service, $1,963,000. Okay, $1,963,457.43, with the total proposed school tax levy of $4,555,071.52. Now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Cannon Falls School District, Cannon Falls, Minnesota, that the levy to be levied in 2022 to be collected in 2023 is set at $4,555,071.52. The Clerk of Cannon Falls School Board is authorized to certify the proposed levy to the County Auditor of Goodhue and Dakota Counties, Minnesota. So I'll do the roll call. Voting yes would be approving it. So Bill?
Yes.
Katie, yes. Bob?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
And Joanne?
Yes.
Okay, that passes by 6-0. Thank you, Katie. Consideration to approve the revised 534 school meals policy.
Yes, there was some changes to the 534 school meals policy from earlier, and I am recommending these policies. They came out after the school year, and it basically deals with lunch shaming. Is that accurate, Lori?
Yeah.
That one didn't print, so if you wanted to see it, you can put it on the screen.
Oh. It was on the thing though, right?
It was on the
Yeah, 'cause I
electronic, I
clicked
just
on
couldn't, I
it.
couldn't print it out.
Okay, gotcha.
We look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Katie on the motion,
A second.
seconded by Jolynn. Other discussion? There's just a little bit of a break in there when I asked for a motion. Can you just really briefly make a statement about lunch shaming?
Sure. In the past, school districts have been asked to provide alternate meals for kids that cannot afford meals. And so by providing that alternate meal is seen as a lunch shame. And so currently we need to provide regular meals.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, a second on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor of the approval of the revised policy for 534 school meals policy, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Consideration to approve the 22-23 local continuing ed relicensure committee bylaws.
Yes, every so often, we have to approve the local continuing ed relicensure committee bylaws. This is the first time I've seen this come through from the state, so I'm guessing it is relatively new. And so we are asking the board to approve this template bylaws for our committee. And they will use this as guidance for relicensing our teachers and admin staff.
Motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Luke on the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Katie. Other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consideration to hire a biz teacher from December 16th to May 19th.
Yes, we finally found a business teacher that will take over for second semester. We're giving them some time in the classroom for this week. And they will start after the holiday break. And it is Steve Clark, which I think is familiar to some of you. So I recommend approval.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second. Brenda on the approval motion and Luke on the second. Other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. Consideration to hire 1 FTE teacher for the STEM Maker Space Innovation Lab 23-24.
Yes, this is a position that with the $100,000 donation from Gemini, and want Tim to chime in here anytime if I get ahead of my skis a little bit. But the idea would be to hire a facilitator for that area space, not necessarily a teacher. The facilitator would help the teacher and students use that space properly and integrate curriculum into that area, no matter what curricular area is coming in there. We would first have to offer, or at least open the position within our staffing. If we do have somebody in-house, we feel confident that it would not be any additional dollars that it would cost the district. If we do have to go outside of the district, there would be an additional cost, but those dollars would be coming in. When Josh talked about the technology levy dollars, we could use those because they start up this next fiscal year. We feel that that would be an appropriate use for that. And so at this point, we're just asking the board for us to open up the position and then advertise for it in-house. And then if we don't find somebody, we would go outside of the district to find a facilitator for that area.
That money was one time. What happens in year 2 as far as that position? How do we continue to bankroll that position?
It would be an ongoing staffing position.
So there's one staff in that lab.
Yep, so they would manage the lab, but also facilitate, they would help teachers coming into the classroom with their classes, help facilitate the learning and how to use that lab with their curricular areas, no matter what the curricular area is.
And that's why it's a facilitator, not really.
Right, yeah.
Jeff, would this position, or would this space be used, say construction is delayed, or is it tied to any of the construction that is happening?
The space is actually right behind us here.
Yep. It's right.
So regardless of crazy scheduling that happens in construction, it would be, okay. I just didn't,
I think the only thing that crazy could happen, because you just mentioned this today, Tim goes, I should probably get on ordering those supplies, seeing that supplies are taking forever to get in. So make sure that we have them by September. So that would be the only thing.
okay.
Could you review the finance part of it again, that if it's someone in-house versus outside the district?
Yep, so, depending on who applies, probably the best way to say that, we would be, especially with having a business teacher on board, I think that helps quite a bit to shoulder some of the load of some of that FTE. And so we would shift FTE away from whatever teacher, and then that teacher would be freed up to be in the lab.
And so if it's from the outside, really just doing a true ad, then
It would be a true ad. Yep.
and that poses the question to Bob, you know, as far as moving forward.
Yeah, it would be a year-over-year
So,
expense
Right.
above what we have for FTE right now. But I think with the community's commitment, it's like Gemini's commitment, I think it's important that when we talk about vision and stuff like that, Phil from Gemini asked us what we needed here, what we wanted here, and Tim came up with the vision, and Tim has been talking about that since day one, since I've been here. Obviously, we've had some financial, strains that we've gone through over the first few years, but Gemini made a pretty big commitment, and I think it's important to fulfill that vision by putting some skin in the game.
Sure, and I think from a vision of the board, it's really about kind of helping in that area.
Yeah, and I believe that's part of one of our strategic plan boxes as well, so.
So, I guess from the structure of the finances, we have to be thinking that of the possibility that we're gonna do this next year.
Yeah. Depends on what we get for a hire, and we can talk more about that once we figure that out.
All right. I'll make the motion to approve.
Bill on the motion. Your second?
I'll second.
Second by Jolynn. Other discussion? All in favor of the 1.0 FTE teacher for STEM Maker Space Innovation Lab for 23-24? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried.
Could you just remind me again, what kind of items would be in that room? What kind of stuff is gonna be in that room?
There are 4 main areas: robotics and drones technology, coding, which will be done through some different types of things like Raspberry Pi computers and Arduinos. Engineering, which we have lots of different options that we can put in there for engineering. I think the kits that I looked at for the proposal to Jen and I focused on mechanical engineering, pneumatics, hydraulics. Those are kind of the main areas. And then the last major component of it is communications. So when we have kids use the innovation lab, we want them to be able to communicate back what they've learned and how they've applied what they've done. So we're putting some pieces in place for them to be able to do that. It's kind of a showcase for people. So.
I think the idea is to connect that lab with all of the different curricular areas in the school district and not just science and math.
Yeah, that's in the job description, and that's going to be one of the major components of that facilitator is helping teachers look at how STEM can apply to areas that where they may not normally think it would apply. So.
Okay, item number 9. Brenda is leaving us. 14 years on the board. I speak from the most experience in interaction. Brenda and I didn't know very much of each other before we started, but she's a valued friend, and our community and our school should understand the value what a board member does, and especially a board member that served 4 terms. And I can't say enough about what you've done and how you've led with quiet leadership. You understand your role as a school board member is to reinforce what the administration does and to quiz them when we need to quiz them. You've done just an exemplary job, and for me, it's going to be hard to replace somebody who is so committed to the district and her community. So I'd just like to thank you for that. Anyone else? I will then turn it over to Brenda. She can say goodbye.
Thank you, Brenda.
Well, I just wanted to actually thank everyone, almost everyone in this room. Not everyone, no. Some of you I don't know. No, but the administration, staff, the teachers, and everyone who's worked so hard over the years, and it's just a school we can really be proud of. And it's been a long 14 years, and I've learned a lot, and thank Bob for his leadership through all that, through 4 different boards. And we've had to make some tough decisions and go through some tough times the last couple of years. And there have been a lot of challenges along the way, but I think we've done a good job keeping the board together and everyone working together for the community as well, and the teachers and everyone for their support, and everyone working together to just really have a great school district we can all be proud of.
We've waded through over the last 2.5 years more than all of the previous
Yeah.
12 years. And the stress level, and it really goes a long way, and we should recognize your leadership during all that stuff, because times were really tough between COVID, the last election, the animosities or the questioning back and forth by a few. So you've done a really good job, and I'm going to miss you.
Thank you. That's all of it too.
But I think, I was doing the math and I forgot that you were on the 2-year.
Yeah, there's 1 2-year term in
Yeah.
there.
And
When's your left?
Bob tried to convince you to run again, I'm sure.
It's a tough decision.
Yeah, and so thank you for your service.
I have to pass the baton. to these guys.
Well, we're proud of everything you've done for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. As you can see what's coming up, the next regular board meeting, our organizational meeting happens at the very first meeting of the year, and we do a lot. We kind of balance out the rest of the year. So when you're looking at committees and your desire to be on committees, you should maybe even contact Lori and say, what time does this meet? Because there's some people that make 7 a.m. meetings. There's some people that have a hard time at 3:15 meetings. And we should make your presence compatible with the committee. So, having said that, I would look for a motion to adjourn. That's all.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion by
For the
Brenda
last time.
for the last time,
I'll second.
seconded by Luke. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.